Eddie Murphy is a con. Nick Nolte is a cop. They couldn't like each other any less. They couldn't need each other anymore.
I'm sorry about the door, man. Did that hurt? It looked real painful.
Because they've got just 48 hours to track down a killer.
If Gant gets away with my money, you're gonna be sorry you ever met me.
I'm already sorry.
The original 48 Hours, starring Eddie Murphy, tonight at 10:30, ITV.
You're watching London Weekend Television, part of the ITV network.
The news from ITN.
Jordan's King Hussein appeals to the US pull out of the Gulf soon. De Klerk heads for Washington but says he's not going hat in hand. Painkillers help carry Ian Woosnam into the Suntory final. And the M1 blowout that stopped the traffic. Good evening. King Hussein of Jordan has urged the United States and its allies to pull out of Saudi Arabia as soon as possible to prevent what he called incalculable grave consequences. He made his appeal in a live broadcast on America's cable news network. He also called for a negotiated settlement of the Gulf crisis. Saudi Arabia has denied that it's cut oil supplies to Jordan for supporting Iraq. It says instead that Jordan was behind on its payments. It's also been reported that Saudi Arabia has told Jordan, Iraq and Yemen to reduce their embassy staff to no more than 3 diplomats.
King Hussein is the man in the middle of a crisis. For 7 weeks he's tried to keep a political balance between friends from the West and his powerful ally Iraq. His efforts to mediate for peace have taken him round the world, but so far in vain. Tonight the King made a personal appeal to the American people on cable news network. His message was that Western military forces must leave.
We strongly feel that the presence of United States and allied forces on the land of the state, which is the custodian of the 2 holiest shrines of Islam, must be terminated within the shortest possible period of time, lest it results in incalculable grave consequences involving Arabs and Muslims the world over for generations to come.
I mean, what is your gut feeling about how this is going to be resolved?
I'm worried. I'm really concerned. Because by miscalculation, by design, any quarter could ignite the situation, and the results would be devastating.
Meanwhile, tonight, Iraqi television claimed President Bush and the CIA were trying to split King Hussein from Saddam Hussein, but they warned such efforts would fail. The 2 Husseins, they said, would stand together in the face of aggression. It's just that image that has pushed Saudi Arabia into cutting its oil supplies to Jordan. The Saudis had been piping in 60% of Jordan's oil needs to make up for reductions in imports from Iraq. Now they're clearly exerting pressure on Jordan for showing sympathy with Iraq, a move that could signal economic disaster.
Really, sometimes you feel really sad and rather upset about it, because we feel that sanctions are not supposed to be applied against Jordan.
Tonight, Jordan's cabinet ministers were urgently seeking alternative oil supplies as Saudi Arabia and its Western allies tighten their sanctions on Iraq. The King is now being forced to make up his mind which side he's on. King Hussein's efforts to avert war sound ever more desperate. He knows that if hostilities do begin, his small, beleaguered kingdom could be crushed between 2 giant warring factions. Jeremy Thompson, ITN in Amman.
There's confusion tonight over reports that Saudi Arabia has expelled 70 diplomatic staff of the Jordanian and Yemeni embassies in Riyadh. Earlier, Yemen said it was losing 50 staff. A Jordanian official said 20 of its diplomats had been ordered out, though this was later denied by King Hussein. Tonight, unofficial Saudi sources said that Jordan, Yemen and Iraq itself were told 10 days ago to cut their embassy personnel. There's been no official announcement. The last plane carrying evacuees from Iraq touched down at Gatwick less than an hour ago. On board were 150 people, mostly Americans, but including a dozen Britons. Iraq has said they won't allow any more evacuation flights after this. 100 Iraqis are expected to be taken back to Baghdad on the return flight. South Africa's President de Klerk, heading for Washington for an historic meeting with President Bush, says he won't be begging for US sanctions to be lifted. But the ANC has warned the Americans not to be fooled by Mr. de Klerk's promises of reform.
More victims of black faction fighting were buried today as the conflict between Nelson Mandela's African National Congress and Chief MANGOSUTHU Buthelesi's Inkatha movement became a war of words. Chief Buthelezi told ITN that Mr. Mandela was setting him up by inviting him to a previously arranged meeting of homeland rulers not called to discuss violence.
And then all of a sudden they say now to discuss violence, you see, precisely because they know that many shallow-minded people are going to use it against me and say, oh, I don't care about the loss of human lives. But I won't be set up like that. I've been in politics for a very long time.
So you're accusing Mr. Mandela of setting you up?
Why not? I mean, anyone who suggests that I should do in this way is trying to set me up.
Meanwhile, the government's Operation Iron Fist ensured a continuing lull in the fighting, as State President F.W. de Klerk prepared to depart for the first visit to the United States by a South African president. But he said he wasn't going begging.
I'm not going hat in hand. I'm not going with a particular objective of getting sanctions lifted. I sincerely believe a new reality already in South Africa.
President de Klerk sees President Bush on Monday, a landmark meeting which breaks South Africa's long international isolation. Kevin Dunn, ITN, South Africa.
Here, the Scottish National Party has chosen Alex Salmond, the MP for Banff-Buchan, as its new leader. He beat Margaret Ewing by a large majority in the ballot at the party's conference in Perth.
Alex Salmond stepped up to the leadership of the Scottish National Party with a huge majority and a hug for Margaret Ewing, his rival in the election campaign. In his acceptance speech, Salmond launched an immediate attack on Labour, the party that dominates Scottish politics.
Let's have a word for the Labour leadership in Scotland. Your days of dominance are numbered. The Labour leadership may win the battle for the yuppie votes in the south. We're going to win the battle for the hearts and minds of the Scottish people.
The first big test for the SNP under its new leader will be a by-election at the Labour stronghold of Paisley North. But even a spectacular victory there would mean the Nationalists holding only 5 of Scotland's 72 parliamentary seats. John Curran, ITN, Perth.
Lord Swan, the former chairman of the BBC, has died aged 70. As Sir Michael Swan, he held the job from 1973 until 1980, when he became Provost of Oriel College, Oxford. The Lord Chancellor, Lord Mackay, has called for a quick end to the investigation into claims of satanic child abuse in Rochdale. Speaking at the Bar Council's annual conference, he said there should be no unnecessary delay by the courts in dealing with the allegations.
The Lord Chancellor rarely comments publicly on cases in the courts, but at the Bar's annual conference today, he expressed concern that the cases of the 15 children in care in Rochdale should be dealt with speedily. The President of the Family Division is due to consider the cases at a special hearing in London on Monday.
The President of the Family Division decides himself what he's going to do, and I'm sure that he is as anxious as I am that there be no unnecessary delay.
The Lord Chancellor also warned the legal profession that the government is seriously concerned about the spiralling cost of legal aid. This year, the legal aid bill reached £715 million. That's more than double the figure of £320 million 5 years ago.
Resources are finite, and legal aid is not and cannot be an unconditional blank cheque from the taxpayer. We therefore have to ensure that cases are dealt with at the right level and that ineffective practice and procedure is eliminated both by the courts and by lawyers.
That's unlikely to be welcomed by most lawyers who consider legal aid fees are still too low and too few people qualify for help.
Now with news of the Wentworth Golf and the rest of the day's sport, here's Giles Smith.
Liverpool march on with their 100% record at the top of the First Division. 2 goals from Peter Beardsley today helped them to a 3-2 derby win over Everton. Last year's runners-up Aston Villa were hoping to keep up their good run, but they got off to a bad start against Queen's Park Rangers.
Just as they did in Europe in midweek, Aston Villa conceded an early and a bad goal. Andy Sinton picking his way through the defence. It gave Nigel Spink no chance and brought a beam to Sinton's face. But Gordon Cowans has a trusty left boot. Maddox took his eye off the ball as Ormondroyd threatened. It left Derek Mountfield with a virtual free header. That was 2 in quick succession, and on the half hour it happened again. Kent Nielsen got behind Lee Ferdinand. No one argued that it was a penalty. Roy Wegerle, 3 against Luton last week, stepped up. Spink got a hand to it, but 2-1 it was. But a minute later, an astonishing goal to bring Aston Villa level. A half clearance, Ian Ormondroyd lashed out from 20 yards, leaving Tony Roberts grasping at thin air. The 6'5" Yorkshireman, only in the team because of injury, again staked his claim to a regular place. Indeed, he almost scored the winner. In the last minute of the game, a back header from a Cowan's corner was pushed away to deny him the ideal birthday present. Bob Hall, ITN Sport, Villa Park.
Arsenal lead the chase after Liverpool. They're 4 points behind. Today, their new Swedish signing Anders Limpar scored again. Manchester United a third, and Mark Hughes got back to scoring as the Reds won at Old Trafford. A Paul Gascoigne free kick put Spurs in front, but the London derby ended level when Thomas equalised for Palace. Spurs are fourth. In Scotland, a late goal from Billy McKinlay keeps the Dundee side top. That was Rangers' first defeat this season. Tomorrow's final of the Suntory World Matchplay Championship will be between Welshman Ian Woosnam and Mark McNulty of Zimbabwe. In the semi-finals, McNulty beat Greg Norman, while a painkiller helped an injured Woosnam overcome the American Chip Beck.
Woosnam had a 3-hole lead going into the second round, and he needed it. In the afternoon, Chip Beck made a comeback which almost saved the match. Consecutive birdies brought him within 1 hole of Woosnam, but it wasn't long before the Welshman replied. 3 behind at the 16th, Beck conceded, and Woosnam looked forward to a final tomorrow against McNulty.
I'd rather play Mark. I know his game a bit better, and I know, you know, if I play well, keep him under pressure all the time, it'll make Mark hold the putts.
Which is exactly what he did today. McNulty came from behind to beat the world number 2. Greg Norman never quite looked in the mood to take over the match. But one shot from off the green was a welcome reminder of what the crowds are missing. Finally, though, it was McNulty's formidable touch around the greens which saw him through to the final. Peter Staunton, ITN Sport, Wentworth.
Racing, and Ibn Bay today won the Irish St Leger at the Curragh to complete an English clean sweep of all the 1990 Irish Classics, the first time that's been done in 34 years.
Mr. Pintis with Ibn Bay fighting back on the inside as they race towards the finish. Ibn Bay on the inside, has it as they go to the line. Ibn Bay wins the Irish Leger by about a length. Mr. Pintis second.
For trainer Paul Cole and jockey Richard Quinn, a double. Last week they won the English St Leger with Snurge. Ibn Bay was 5-1, Mr. Pintips 25-1, and third Bray She at 5-1. British humiliation, though, in tennis. Jeremy Bates and Andrew Castle were thrashed 3 sets to love by the French pair of Henri Leconte and Guy Forget to give France a winning 3-0 lead in the Davis Cup tie at Queen's. Leconte and his partner were simply in a different class to the British men in the first set, taking it 6-1 in 20 minutes. The crowd might have consisted mainly of French people, as British coach Warren Jacques tried to motivate his men. And even when Bates and Castle raised their game to something approaching the level of their opponents, it seemed the French were always having the last word. The Brits didn't seem to know what to do next. The end was typically depressing. France stay in the top 16 of world tennis. Britain are firmly rooted in Division 2.
Finally, the M1 lost one of its bridges today in spectacular style. The bridge near Kegworth spanned the motorway between junctions 23 and 24, but it's been blown up to make way for a new road.
The bridge was built to connect 2 fields owned by the same farmer, but needed to be cleared for a new junction connecting the M1 and M42. Because of its construction, it couldn't be dismantled, so this morning 80 pounds of explosives were packed inside. At about 2:30, sirens blared and the explosion took place. A successful blast, and so far a successful exercise in traffic management too, with only minor delays caused by the motorway closure.
It's obvious that a lot of people have heeded the advice that the media have been giving out on our behalf to stay away from this area.
There could be more problems tomorrow. The stretch of motorway doesn't reopen until 5 o'clock on Monday morning. As for the farmer, a tunnel's been built for him further south.
ITN is on the air throughout the night, but for now, good evening.
What would a Labour government mean for prices, jobs and interest rates? I'll be interviewing John Smith, the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sunday at 1:10.
Good evening. I'm going to show you today's cloud scan sequence in a moment, but you'll have to find yourself on the map fairly quickly before you disappear beneath a veil of cloud that covered most of Britain today. Odd sunny spells appearing, but really two interesting areas amongst this cloud. There's a band of white cloud in the south. That's a thicker cloud that produced last night's rain and rain this morning too. That's been moving away southeastwards, as you can see, the odd sunny spell behind it. Another band of cloud in the north. That's a band of showery rain that's still moving south and still has to get to the south of England yet. Tonight's picture in a bit more detail now then, well, clearing skies for parts of the north, the odd shower still around the coasts in Northern Ireland and Scotland, but clear spells inland. Further south you are, well, Northern England southwards really at the moment, a lot of cloud around and outbreaks of rain to come, some of them fairly heavy. The lowest temperatures tonight will be up over Scotland beneath those clearing skies with a touch of ground frost around. Down in the south, much milder beneath that cloud, 9's about 48. Now tomorrow's weather, well, the best of it certainly the further north you are, from North Wales northwards. Clearing skies, or at least breaks in the clouds, shall we say, some sunny spells around, but showers as well. Further south than that, from the Midlands southwards, a lot of cloud during the morning with outbreaks of rain. The brighter weather will try and slip southwards during the day, but it may never reach the south coast. A quick look at the temperatures. 15 is the best we can expect in the south, that's only 59. A bright but breezy 14 in the north, that's about 57. That's the national story then. Here's a summary. More detailed look at the southeast now. One of the largest outdoor events in our region tomorrow is the charity run that sets off from Westminster in the morning. I'm sure the rain will do nothing to dampen their spirits. Not too much in the way of rain at the moment, but clouds already thickening, outbreaks of rain around, and some heavier rain spreading down from the north during the night. Lowest temperatures around 8, and that's about 46. On to tomorrow now, not the best of mornings for that run. There will be a lot of cloud around and outbreaks of rain, much of it fairly light and patchy, but some heavier bursts are quite possible. Much needed rain, of course, for some of the farmers and gardeners. During the afternoon, brighter weather will follow on from the north too. Odd sunny spells coming along, but really the south coast and Kent in particular could well stay cloudy right through the afternoon, so fingers crossed down there. Top temperatures tomorrow, a cool 15, that's only 59, and a fresh westerly breeze too. Not the best of days, but it is brightening up for the north. That's it from me. Here's tomorrow's summary.
Next, Eddie Murphy teams up with partner Nick Nolte to find a killer in just 48 hours.